What you see here are images from a nightmare, a day of unspeakable hatred and horror 99 years ago in the Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Arguably one of the worst race riots in the history of the country, but the death and destruction was absolutely extraordinary.
At the time, Greenwood was known as the Black Wall Street, a self-contained community of African-American businesses, hotels, theaters, and churches, and African-American wealth. Chicago investment executive John Rogers' DNA goes back to that community.
My great-grandfather was J.B. Stratford. He was a pioneering entrepreneur. He owned the Stratford Hotel and a lot of real estate in Tulsa, Oklahoma 100 years ago.
It was something of a paradise, but it all came crashing down after allegations that a black youth had attempted to assault a white woman in a downtown Tulsa building. And Greenwood leaders tried to defend that young man at the county courthouse.
Shots were fired, and the black community retreated to Greenwood. The white community followed, and with the support of the police, firebombed the entire community.
In that frenzy of hatred, scores of African-American citizens died and 35 square blocks were burned. J.B. Stratford's home and hotel were destroyed, and he barely escaped with his life.
If you were a leader, they perceived that you're someone who needed to be jailed and possibly lynched. So my great-grandfather escaped Tulsa and was able to hide, get on a train, get out of town before they were able to arrest him.
I grew up in Oklahoma. Oklahoma history was a required course when I was in high school, but we were never told about what happened in Tulsa.
It's incredible. They didn't want people to hear about it. They didn't want people to read about it, and they didn't want to feel they were responsible for what had happened.
Oklahoma did eventually come to terms with the massacre. A state commission concluded in 2001 that the white mob had been responsible for the deaths of as many as 300 African-American citizens and the destruction of over 1,200 homes, along with scores of churches and businesses.
For several days, people could not communicate with their families. They couldn't go back and forth. They didn't have their freedoms.
There are footnotes to this story. John Rogers today is a successful entrepreneur whose firm, Ariel Investments, manages more than $13 billion in assets. America's first African-American president, Barack Obama, conducted the first days of his transition to the White House from Ariel's offices. And today, Rogers looks at all of that through an unbroken line back to Tulsa.
I'm very, very proud of my great-grandfather, his leadership, his willingness to be outspoken, fight for fairness as he was building his business career in Tulsa. And I think he did a great job of leaving a great legacy for all of us that have been a part of his family.
Phil Rogers, NBC 5 News.